Well, greetings, Instagrammer friends and YouTube followers once again. This is my second review on the same day here, and this time I've picked a very interesting game out of my collection, and this one is called Motorhead. It was developed by Digital Illusions back in 1998 and published by Gremlin. It's a racing game, as you can see by this main menu here. And anyway, I'll tell you quite a bit about this game. It's very interesting. Now, first of all, I'm just going to go into the options screen here. Now, this review is dedicated in particular to my friend Tom Lads. I know you recently got a copy of this game. I don't know if you've tried it yet, but just in case you haven't, here's your chance to have a quick preview of it. But anyway, now, the reason I've gone into this options screen is because we've selected the difficulty to easy. And here are two modes in which you can play this game. First of all, this is the one it's designed for. You've got 3 other cars on track, and it moves at 50 frames a second, which is really smooth. Now, this is the PAL version, so bear in mind that if you had the NTSC version, it would be 60 frames. And alternately, you can choose the 25 frames a second option, which is still very smooth. The resolution is ever so slightly lower, but not really very noticeable at all. But you've got 7 other cars on track, so you can choose either those 2 modes. Now, this particular code here is a cheat code. It's if you input last code, it unlocks all of the tracks and all of the cars. And I think it was necessary for me to do that, because the game, I must say, is particularly hard, but more on that later. Okay, now, sound, I've turned down the car volume to a minimum, and I've turned up the music volume because it's worth listening to. It's kind of like an 80s synth pop. It's really, really good. But anyway, we'll select a single race just to show you how it runs. Select a random car. I like the look of this one. And we'll select the Olympos track. Now, this one's got a very particular catchy piece of music which I really like. So here we go. Now, okay, now first of all, the game is analog control compatible, so it's extremely playable. And I'm going through all the pros at the moment. There is only one particular, let's say 2 cons that this game has, but they shouldn't in any way like dissuade you from actually getting hold of a copy. Now, you listen to that music while I race a little bit. Bum. See, the music is really good. It's old man music.
And old lady music.
Yeah, and old lady music. It's my wife in the background there. We love this stuff. Now, as far as graphics are concerned, as you can see, the game is as smooth as silk. And the atmosphere is really, really good. I mean, it's very futuristic. You can tell I haven't played it for a while. So, excellent graphics, very, very smooth gameplay, very smooth frame rate, but this is the 50 frames a second version I've chosen. Apologies for ramming into everything, but I've forgotten where to go. Now, this particular track is very sort of European in flavour. The buildings are reminiscent of what you would find in Greece, Cyprus. Oh God, not doing well at all, are we? But anyway, you get an idea of how smoothly it runs. Can't get over that music. So, now the pros of the game. Excellent graphics, smooth gameplay, brilliant sound, brilliant music. Of course, you get your usual car and engine sounds, which I've sort of near muted, but only so we can listen to that music, because it's worth a mention. Now, for me, music really does go a long way toward making a game, and I think this one really suits the atmosphere of the game. It is set in the future, as you can see. Now, the cons. First of all, The game was released more or less at the same time as the likes of Gran Turismo. And we know what a powerhouse that game was. So unfortunately it had a lot to compete against. It had a very tough act to follow. But what we're going to do is we're going to take it as a game in its own right. Now the other con that unfortunately the game has, but for those of you that are hardcore racing fans, I'm sure you'll conquer that. The game is extremely hard. As you can see, I made one little mistake of hitting the sides there. And if you do that, you might as well restart, because you're going to come last. The game is very hard. For those of you that are familiar with Dark Souls, I'd say this is the Dark Souls of racing games. It's one tough cookie. And the other thing, it's also very punishing. I mean, I think it is a game designed for hardcore players only. Now, if you choose to play through the actual league, through the championship, and play the game properly without putting the cheat in and unlocking the tracks as you go along, if you do it and you successfully win races and unlock all 8 tracks, it's an incredibly rewarding experience, simply for the fact that the game is so bloody hard. And the thing is, if you fail, I mean, if you come first or the top 3 in the first race, you get promoted to the second league, so you race on the second track. If you fail in that one, you get demoted and you get put back to the start of it, so you have to race the first track all over again, and it can make for some frustrating gameplay, but the gameplay in itself is good. Now I'm talking on easy mode, it's the same as on the other modes. It's really tough. So that's one thing. Now we're just going to go out of this now. We're going to have a look at some more tracks. Now the cars are fictional. They're not real. Don't know why it's asking me to enter my initials. That was the crappiest racing I've ever done. But there you go. So fictional cars, there aren't any licensed vehicles here. These are all pretend. So it's set in the future. And the tracks are all very futuristic. So we'll go through a few of them. Hopefully it's not too tedious waiting for the game to load. It's not bad. So we'll go into single race. So I chose this one because it looks sort of, slick and futuristic, doesn't it? But you've got a variety of cars, and you can see in the specs that are represented by those circles, you've got speed, acceleration and grip. So you've got to choose one that suits your driving style. So the first one, the very first car you start off with, is not too bad. Not very good speed, but decent acceleration and fairly decent grip. Then you've got very low speed, but high acceleration, low grip, and so on and so forth. This one's got crappy grip, but it's pretty quick. Now the more cars you unlock, the better specs they'll have. So this one is pretty much a good all-rounder-ish. But now because I put the cheat in, I unlock them all. So this is quite a good one. Let's try that one. This is rather good. So the tracks are as follows. So this is just a basic speedway track. It's okay, like a fictional Grand Prix track. Nolby Hills is another sort of quite scenic one. I mean, the title of the track pretty much tells you what kind of scenery you've got there. Olympos is the one we just raced on, the European one. Ruhrstadt is it's kind of like an industrial one, I think. It's not too bad. Atlantica is, as the name suggests, it's kind of like a seaside resort. Neo City is the okay, it's the downtown one. I mean, all these racing games, urban racing games, have a downtown track or two. Red Rock is set on Mars, and the first one is Goldbridge. Yeah, we'll show you the first track. It's nothing to write home about, but it's got some really good music, and it's now when I say atmospheric, the tracks, obviously the setting is set sometime in the future, so things aren't going so well, so people race for a living here, but as you can see, it's got a very dark setting. This one's very foggy. Now For those of you that are experienced in this kind of thing, you know that the fog here is used to mask any form of pop-up. Because on the PlayStation, to get something running this smooth, things are going to suffer. In particular, graphics. So the fog is used to very good effect here. And so this track is meant to be foggy, which is good. Now, as you can see, the buildings still draw in when you approach them, but it's a little compromise we have to put up with, unfortunately. But despite that, for a game released in the late 90s on the humble 32-bit PlayStation machine, this is actually state-of-the-art. And as you can see, it's very, very fluid. I can fare up a little bit better on this track. I sort of know it a bit better. There we go. Having said that, I messed up. There you go. So that's that one. Let's move on to another track now. My initials again. God knows why. Absolutely embarrassing. Okay, so there's your loading screen. Right, so auto-saving, yeah, auto-saving my data, my rather horrible data. I probably won't go through all of them because that might be a little bit too much here, but let's choose that same car again. So Red Rock, again, there's not much to this track, it's just a red rock. It's the surface of Mars, so there isn't much scenery to speak of, the odd little building or rock structure dotted here and there. Neo City is quite a good one. That's your downtown track. Let's try that one and see how it goes. So yes, this game actually had the unfortunate thing of, I think they released it at the wrong time really, which is a crying shame. I'm almost convinced, had this been released a little bit before Gran Turismo, it would have fared up a lot better. The only thing going against it is the very high difficulty, but I think hardcore gamers wouldn't have really minded about that. I think gameplay wise, it's a cross between Wipeout and Ridge Racer. So you've got your drifting around corners, which can be done, and the handling is, yes, it's kind of Wipeout-like. There's little to no slowdown at all. Very, very little of it. I mean, if all the cars are bunched up when you're going around a corner, it may stutter a little bit. But that doesn't happen very often, because you have a hard time keeping up with them. There you go. The lighting is also very good indeed. Now, at one point, a few years ago when I first bought it, I did sit down and play it without the cheat. I tried, and I spent a good couple of hours with it. And I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore gamer. In particular, I'm not a hardcore racing gamer. I don't like simulations. I prefer something arcadey. And I struggled with this because it is hard. I think I got to unlocking third or the fourth track, then I got demoted again. I went back to the beginning. I kept going further back, so I thought, sod it. Thank God for last code. So we'll enter our initials there. So that was that particular track. We'll try another one now. And there isn't really much more to say about this game, except for the fact that if you take it aside and not compare it to the likes of Gran Turismo or, or the Need for Speed games or the Ridge Racers, you'll find that you've got a very quality game here. And the only problem is that it's incredibly hard. Let's do Atlantica. That's a slightly brighter, less depressing course. Yeah, the courses are a little bit on the depressing side, but then again, I think that's the future that has been envisioned when this game was first designed. Very bleak and not so hot, where only the elite and the creme de la creme had money to sort of organise these races. There we are, slightly nicer looking track. This is the seaside resort of Atlantica. So as you can see, the fogging is used to very good effect here. Masking as much pop-up as they can. Mamma mia, look at that, absolutely disgraceful. There we go. Yeah, you know, the last time I picked this up to actually play it was about 6 or 7 years ago. It's been that long. So there you go. Look, when I've not got the pressure of racing against other cars and showing my followers here that I'm not too much of a crap gamer, I'm starting to catch up with them now. And when you do a single race, there is a catch-up option, which I've turned on here, so I'm not left eating dust. And of course, for every track you get a different piece of music, which suits it perfectly. There you go. There's, if you notice there, an ever so slight bit of stutter because all the cars happen to be bunched up on screen at the same time. But that's a very rare occurrence. It doesn't happen when you play in the other mode. If you choose to have all 7 cars on track and play it at 25 frames a second, you don't get that, and the game is still smooth. So really, it's yeah, it's a win-win situation. Now, the other fortunate thing, if you do want to track this one down, it's not expensive. It's very cheap to track down. And the only thing is, you really have to race without making practically any mistakes whatsoever. If you hit the sides and you get slowed down even for 2 or 3 seconds, you might as well restart because it's tough. You see, now I keep messing up there, and the minute you do, your opponents shoot right past you without any mercy whatsoever. Now, you know about game music, sad as I am, but that's just me. I like these music tracks so much. The third isn't bad. I actually got hold of the official soundtrack. I actually downloaded some of the tracks and I play them in the car. I did the same with some of the Wipeout tracks. I made a little compilation of game music, and you know, some of it's actually bloody good. But, well, there you have it. It seems that's all we've got time for before my cell phone conks out because I've used it to record for too long. But there you go. This is Motorhead. Unfortunately released at the wrong time, but in itself is a really quality racing game. Only for hardcore gamers, unfortunately. That's the only, I think probably the only major thing that lets it down, is that not everybody can actually play it without tearing out their hair. And I don't have that problem. I don't have any hair. I tore it out ages ago over games like these. But if you do have a chance to track it down, do get hold of a copy, because it's one of the games that back in the time, it showed off what your PlayStation could do. So I would highly recommend it. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. And yep, by all means, stay tuned because there's more to come. Ciao, ciao. You know where you stand with retro.